Good morning. Welcome to the King's Report for December 6th, 2017, 8th year of Chungi, 10th month, and the 19th day by the heavenly calendar. I'm Tim Elder with Mr. Greg Knoll in for the second king of Hyung. And let's start this morning with our weather as we usually do. It's 43 degrees right now in the Cheonggyeong area. And it's only going to get up to 44, so it's going to be pretty much steady temperature today. Partly cloudy right now. The rain, I guess, has stopped in the Cheonggyeong area, and it's going to be continued to clear. And it's going to be windy today because there's a front coming in. And it's going to be clear tonight, getting down to 27 degrees. Tomorrow, 42. And so today, it's from after today, the daytime highs are going to go on a steady decline.
Well, we're entering winter. We
are entering winter, yes. Mm-hmm. Steady decline, and actually by the weekend. We're going to have a highs highs will just be in the 30s, and then our lows will be in the lower 20s. And we're going to have some snow this weekend, it looks like. Saturday maybe, but also Sunday. Not a lot.
A little dusting.
Well, maybe an inch, so a little more than a dusting. Mm-hmm. But it says here between 0.2 and 1 inches. 1 inches, they say in plural. But there's a 45% chance that there'll be more than 1 inch, so we'll have to see when that 45% chance comes out. But anyway, maybe our first snow of December. We had some snow in November, but then it all melted before Thanksgiving, and so we did not have a white Thanksgiving.
I'm from Syracuse. We almost always had a white Thanksgiving. Yeah, we have the lake effect snow up there, mm-hmm. So the cold Canadian winds come across the Lake Ontario, and Syracuse gets dumped early in the season. Usually October we have our first snowfall. It's not so bad.
All right, let's go to our Rima. In my Bible Rima this morning, I'm in 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 11 through 14. Seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of persons ought ye to be in all holy conversations and godliness, looking for and hasting unto the coming of the day of God, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth, wherein dwelleth righteousness. Wherefore, beloved, seeing that ye look for such things, be diligent that ye may be found of him in peace, without spot, and blameless.
Wow.
Noonday sun.
That's tough.
And my Cheonggyeong Rima is very similar. Seems to connect very closely, so I want to go ahead and read that. I'm in the chapter on etiquette, the book on etiquette, chapter 4. And in that, let's see, I'm on page 1083. All right, I'll give you the official English translation, and then we'll talk about that a little bit. You should not speak or act with just any words and actions. You should be raised to the position of God's son and daughter and speak and act as God's son and daughter. All right, that's the official translation.
What's it really say, Tim?
What does it really say? It says... So don't just speak words as words, and don't just make actions as actions. Everything must be established on the basis that you are the sons and daughters of God. So on the foundation that on that status, the status uses the word "we" here, which means status, status as sons and daughters of God, and you must always speak as the Son of God and as the daughter of God, and act as the Son of God and as the daughter of God. So this translation is similar, but I think it's not quite. It could be more faithful. But I see that as being very much related to what 2 Peter says, that we should. That we ought ye to be in all holy conversation and godliness. What manner of person ought ye to be in all holy conversation and godliness? So our conversations should be holy, and our actions should be holy. And we should always speak on the basis that we are, basis, I guess is a better word than status, basis that we are the Son of God, and speak as the Son of God, speak and act as the daughter of God.
Some people would interpret holy as always being nice.
Well, Jesus and the money changers.
Right. And Father and the second king. So
Yes.
I think along the word holy can be examined as being truthful and righteous.
Righteous.
Yeah.
Yes.
Truthful and righteous.
Mm-hmm.
And not always, that's not always, sometimes I think in the West we think of holy as, up on the clouds and
Mm-hmm.
meditating and always being nice, nicey nice. But that's not what God is calling us to do, especially at this time.
Well, when I first chose my Rima this morning, I got something a little bit different. And it relates to this. And, I got, when I first chose my Rima, I got 1 Chronicles 6, all right? And this is basically the son, children, naming all the names and begats and everything like that. And I was thinking, no, listen, come on. No, that's not it. But I was in the Patriots Bible, and over here on the right is something that relates to the role of religion in politics.
Okay.
And I think maybe this is supposed to be my Rima.
We're on the wrong side of the page.
On the wrong side of the page.
The commentary.
But the commentary here, but it relates to what you just said about holy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because what it says is that basically what it says is that in the American Revolution, the churches had a major role. In fact, they were the central role, because the churches said, "Listen, there's God's law,
Right.
which is natural law, and then there's man's law, represented by what King George is trying to do with us, taxing us and
He was a tyrant.
Tyrant, being a tyrant, and so we need to fight in order to uphold God's law." And one preacher, in fact, here we go. Indicative of this spirit, in 1775, the Lutheran pastor John Peter Gabriel Muhlenberg, Lutherans, listen up. I don't think this is going to happen in today's Lutheran church. Muhlenberg preached a sermon on Ecclesiastes 3:1. To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. Concluding the message, he declared, in the language of the Holy Writ, there is a time for all things. There is a time to preach and a time to fight. And now is the time to fight. He then threw off his clerical robes to reveal the uniform of a Revolutionary Army officer. That afternoon, at the head of 300 men, he marched off to join General Washington's troops and became colonel of the 8th Virginia Regiment.
Wow.
Let's see a Lutheran pastor to do that today.
Yep. Well, that's what God is calling us, right?
Yes.
We're in a similar battle today on a cosmic level.
Ministers turned the colonial resistance into a righteous cause and served at every level in the conflict, from military chaplains to members of state legislatures, to take up arms and leading troops into battle. And ultimately, after two main British armies were captured by the Continental Army at Saratoga in 1777 and Yorktown in 1781, the other words of Patrick Henry to his fellow Virginians proved true. 3 millions of people armed with the holy cause of liberty, and in such a country as that which we possess, are invincible by any force which our enemy can send against us. So pastors were very much involved in politics. And today, of course, we have people are talking about the Johnson Amendment more and more right now. But see, before Johnson became vice president and then later on president, he was a member of the Senate representing Texas, and he was having trouble with the churches in Texas. The churches in Texas were critical of him, especially a few churches were causing him problems. So he said, "Okay, what we'll do is we'll give churches this special favor. We will not. We will say that, okay, that when people donate to churches, then those donations can be exempted from their income, and when they're filing their income taxes. In return,
there's a catch.
In return, churches must not. Ministers must not talk about politics from the pulpit. Of course, this has been flagrantly violated more by Democratic-leaning churches than by Republican-leaning churches, I would say. But it has made the church very, very docile. And that is, and it has really corrupted the church in that way. The Johnson Amendment, I think, has had that effect. Traditionally in America, not only in Revolutionary War, but also in the abolitionist movement to get rid of slavery, the church has had a major role. And it is the mission of the churches to be the salt of the earth, to be the light on a hill. In other words, to have the function of prophets, really. And the prophets stood up to the rulers of that time. And God would speak to the rulers of that time through his prophets, because the rulers were basically blocking themselves off from God, and God would speak to the rulers through the prophets, and the prophets would speak out against the rulers. That was the function of the prophet. And the church today, most churches today, have lost that prophetic role. The second king has warned about the pre-trib theology, right? That says that we're going to be raptured up into heaven, and so all this stuff about politics on this earth, we don't need to get involved in that because it really has nothing to do with us as Christians.
In fact,
how wrong that is.
It's discouraged, right? Because it takes you away from focusing on God.
Right. And how wrong that is, how that really takes the church away from its essential and core mission.
Right.
And I'm very encouraged by the fact that the king has been connecting to more and more Christian pastors, more and more to
who are active,
who are active, and some are not so active. But anyway,
the debate is there.
The debate is there, yes. And I'm very encouraged by that, because the Messiah comes on the foundation of Christianity. But for Christianity to be that foundation, it has to be a Christianity. It has to be a church that is fulfilling that prophetic role in society, and fulfilling that prophetic role in terms of politics. And so I think it is completely and absolutely right that the second king is making very clear what God wants politicians to do, and what he wants us to do as citizens of this country. Last year in the presidential election, he made very clear that he wanted people. God wanted people to support Trump and not Hillary, and
get out there and do something.
Yeah, get out there and at least vote and to do something. And then now he's supporting Trump in his various actions that are godly. And that's a tremendously important function of the church, mission of the church. That's how we are the salt of the earth, not just to be a place where, some people say, when I go to church, I don't want there to be any politics because I just want to go there and
feel good.
Well, listen, stay home. Stay home and watch
cartoons.
Cartoons, yeah.
Well, I think the king is, he's fulfilling a providential role. There's been a shift in the providence after Father's ascension with the failure of the Han mother to really submit to the kingship. So the king has, this is a very unique time in the providence. This is still the tribulation period, and the king is really calling people, just like this Lutheran minister that you read from, to really stand up and to fight the tyrants. This is the time in which we live, and people who take heed and prepare well will be fulfilling God's will at this time. And those who sit on the sidelines and don't really prepare well, that's going to be like the story in the Bible with the virgins. Some will be prepared and led into the banquet, and others will be sorry, you didn't prepare well.
The door will be closed.
The door will be closed. So
who's there? I don't care.
Some people think the king is being extreme. With the firearms training, survival training, BJJ training. But this is all the time in which we live, where we have to be physically strong, not just spiritually praying, but we have to actually be physically strong and emotionally strong.
And it's a matter of mindset, of having a certain ownership mindset.
Yeah.
If you are relying on others to secure you or to protect you, you have that sort of a very sheep-like mindset,
right,
and not a sheepdog
right.
type mindset.
Yeah.
And so certainly as owners of Cheonryuk, if we're going to be owners of Cheonryuk, that means we take responsibility for Cheonryuk, right? We put ourselves in the subject partner position to Cheonryuk. So we don't rely on others. We don't rely on the government to protect us. Rather, we are the owners of the government. So then we don't abdicate that responsibility to the government. We take it upon ourselves to protect ourselves, our families, and our community. The only institution that God created is the family.
The family, right.
Yes. So we must protect that family. All right, let's take a break, and then we'll come back with some news from the Cheonryuk perspective.
Boy, wasn't that fun shooting this Tommy gun today?
It's always fun shooting Tommy guns. This one especially, it's just absolutely gorgeous.
All polished and chromed up. It really looks like $1,000,000.
Yeah. Elliot Ness would have loved one of those.
Yeah, and it's available right now in your favorite dealer, and you go pick one up.
Yeah, just have him call your distributor.
I mean, the gun, was initially made way back when, back in the 27 is this one.
Yeah, Model 27.
I was surprised by how quick it knocked down those plates.
Oh, 3.5 second run, under 3.5 second run, knocking down a plate right. 341.
I mean, the gun is heavy. It's about, 12, 14 pounds, especially with this drum, but it's surprising how quick you can go with it. It would actually make quite a good self-defense rifle at home.
If I climbed in somebody's window and they were aiming that at me, I think I'd get out of there real quick. So
that sounds about right to me.
Just the intimidation factor alone.
Fire!
Welcome back to the King's Report for December 6th, 2017. Tim Miller and Greg Knoll, and for the Second King of Hyung Jin-moon. And today, if all goes well, if he doesn't pull a NAFTA, President Trump will be announcing that the U.S. recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and that it will be moving our embassy from Tel Aviv to Israel over a period of time. There's some logistical things involved there, but that announcement, very significant announcement, I think. So I want to go into that first. And I say if he doesn't pull a NAFTA, because I remember when, one morning we were expecting him to issue a statement saying that the United States was pulling out of NAFTA. Then Kushner called his friend who works for the Prime Minister of Canada, and then the Prime Minister of Canada called the President of Mexico, and then they did a little tag team on Trump. And then by lunchtime, Trump had changed his mind, saying, "Okay, we'll negotiate, and if negotiations fall through, then we'll withdraw from NAFTA." So we were sort of, the wind was sort of taken out of our sails then. So if he doesn't pull that kind of a thing again, he will be announcing making this announcement today about the U.S. recognizing the capital of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, which no other country does right now. So this will be, the U.S. will be doing this for the first time. President Donald, this is the Breitbart News article where, as you can expect, they're singing Hallelujah. Hallelujah, Trump will recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel Wednesday, begin moving embassy. President Donald Trump will announce Wednesday that the United States recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and that the State Department will begin a process to move the U.S. Embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. Trump will first announce that the United States government recognizes that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, according to one of 3 senior administration officials who spoke with reporters on Tuesday. The officials conveyed that the change is a recognition of reality, both the historic reality that Jerusalem has been the capital of Jewish people and the Jewish faith since ancient times, and the modern reality that the city is the seat of government for Israel, housing its legislature, Supreme Court, Prime Minister, and executive agencies. Second, Trump will direct the State Department to begin the process of moving the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. One official explained that the directive to the State Department requires it to develop a plan for this with a minimum additional burden on taxpayers. It was noted that there are approximately 1,000 personnel in Tel Aviv and that it would take some time to find an appropriate site in Jerusalem. One official stated that despite hopes for an immediate move, it was a practical impossibility to move the embassy tomorrow. But I actually, some time ago, read a article that said that, there's a consulate in Jerusalem, a U.S. consulate. Mm-hmm. I was there. I saw it. It's right there by Independence Park. So at a minimum, all you have to do is take the sign on the Tel Aviv building that says U.S. Embassy, and someone drive it to Jerusalem and then tack it to the building in Jerusalem, to the consulate in Jerusalem, and then the consulate in Jerusalem becomes the embassy.
Mm-hmm. It's an extension of the embassy to some,
Well, right now it is.
Yeah.
But then,
there's nothing serving the same purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, consulates have not as much personnel, and all that, and like it says there, but you could do that. I mean, it's just a matter of taking that sign down and driving it over to Jerusalem and tacking it up on the wall there, on the gate. Anyway, it will find some time to find a safe, address security concern, to find a site, address security concerns, design a new facility, fund a new facility, and build it, said one of the senior officials. They're trying to make it look like it's really a big deal.
Big deal.
Of course, to really actually, have a fully functioning embassy in Jerusalem, I can see how that would take time, but you could do something even today without too much trouble. The official went on to address the issue of the semi-annual presidential waiver that has allowed presidents to delay moving the embassy over the past 22 years and several administrations of both parties. So 22 years ago, Congress actually passed a law saying, move the embassy to Jerusalem. The law said that, move the embassy to Jerusalem. 22 years ago, they did that. But they also said that, okay, every 6 months, the president can look at this situation,
right,
and if he says, for national security reasons, it should be delayed, then he can sign this waiver. And presidents of both parties have been signing this waiver every 6 months. And Trump also signed it once in June. But this time he says, I'm not going to sign it. Instead, I'm going to do what the law says. Do what the law says. Novel concept. Do what the law says and go ahead and move the embassy to Jerusalem and recognize.
So 22 years ago, who was the president that... Was that before? That was before Clinton.
We can go back, but anyway, presidents of both parties have been doing this.
Right.
Okay, so the deadline to sign the waiver passed on Monday night. However, the official stated that President Trump will sign a new waiver as the process begins to move the embassy in order to avoid fairly significant cuts to State Department's funding that the law requires as a consequence. One official stated that Trump will sign the waiver each 6 months until the embassy is opened. Officials emphasized that the president would not specify a timeline for completing and opening the embassy and explained that it would take years, not months. When later pressed on a time frame, one official said that he expected it would take no less than 3 to 4 years, as other embassies have taken at least that long to move. One remarked that the ongoing relocation of the U.S. Embassy in London took 8 years. Pressed on whether the embassy would be moved within Trump's current presidential term so that a potential subsequent administration could not overturn Trump's decision. One official replied, "As a practical matter, no embassy is constructed today anywhere in the world in shorter than 3 to 4 years. No embassy." The official dismissed the possibility that a subsequent president could reverse the decision, adding that updates would be provided on progress toward planning, funding, and building a new embassy. One read a statement declaring that Trump is fulfilling a major campaign promise by recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. He added that a number of previous presidential candidates had made the same promise but had declined to fulfill it. The official further stated that the move has broad bipartisan support in Congress, with the legislative body voting for the Jerusalem Embassy Act in 10 successive Congresses. The act was first passed in 1995. In response to questions about whether Trump's decision would set back negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians, an official said, "Delaying the recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel has done nothing to achieve the peace for more than 2 decades."
Good point.
Yeah. Officials were also at pains to emphasize that no other issue would be affected by the new policy. Trump is prepared to support a two-state solution to the dispute between Israelis and Palestinians if agreed to by the two parties, the official stated. President Trump also recognizes the specific boundaries in Israeli sovereignty in Jerusalem are subject to final status negotiations of such an agreement. President Trump reaffirmed support for the status quo at the Temple Mount, Haram Sharif, the official continued. The decision-making process had involved the president, the cabinet, and department principals. This was a collaborative U.S. government position, said one official later in response to reporters' questions. Reporters were also told that departments and agencies have developed a robust security plan to ensure the safety of U.S. citizens and assets in case of violent protests against Trump decisions. One official stated emphatically that President Trump has had very detailed discussions with Middle East leaders about his decisions on Jerusalem and reiterated a strong commitment to peace. President Trump will make his announcements at 1 p.m. Eastern Time from the White House on Wednesday afternoon.
There you go. Seems like the Palestinians are the ones that are screaming the loudest because they feel this will derail their so-called peace process that has been a complete failure. To date. Yeah, and so
Hamas plans a day of rage in response to Trump's Jerusalem decision. The group is designated by the U.S. as a terror organization, and they're urging Palestinians to protest President Donald Trump's plan to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital and move the U.S. embassy there from Tel Aviv. The group, designated a terrorist organization by the U.S., encouraged Palestinians in an official Arabic statement to send a message with all available means to Israel after the upcoming Friday prayers. It added that making Jerusalem the Israeli capital was crossing a red line, but it already is the capital of Israel. Mm-hmm. I mean, already the legislature is there, the prime minister is there, the Supreme Court is there.
Yeah, so all the infrastructure is there. Yeah.
So nobody's making this the Israeli capital, recognizing that it is the Israeli capital.
Through.
Yeah. Just recognizing an existing reality, which in the Middle East, that's not what you're supposed to do. Existing realities don't carry much weight. We call on the people of Palestine to declare Rage Day and Friday against Israel, denying the U.S. plan to move its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. The statement read, and it added, the youth and the Palestinian resistance in the West Bank need to respond with all means available to the U.S. decision that harms our Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a red line, and the resistance will not allow any desecration of it. Senior Hamas chief Ismail Haniyeh also called upon the people to stand against efforts to Judaize Jerusalem, according to the official group account in Arabic. The warning follows reports that Trump will recognize Jerusalem as the capital. Hamas's English social media accounts, which tend to offer a watered-down version of hostile statements, said the Palestinian leadership urges Palestinians to organize demonstrations against Israel and the U.S. Palestinian factions declared days of anger on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and to hold demonstrations in cities and in front of Israeli embassies and consulates, Hamas Twitter account read. According to Hamas's charter, which outlines key principles and policies, the terror group aims to establish a state of Palestine with Jerusalem as its capital and states that not one stone of the city can be given up.
It looks like Turkey's trying to assemble the Islamic nations to make a coordinated statement against it.
Saudi Arabia is also against it. Jordan is against it. The New York Times has a opinion piece that says, well, of course Jerusalem is the capital. This is by Shmuel Rosner, contributing op-ed writer. How long do you think there has been a Jewish temple on Temple Mount in Jerusalem? That is a question I like to ask when I'm leading a discussion with Israelis or Jews from other countries. The most common response is 2,000 years, but that's actually the answer to a separate question. How long ago did the Romans destroy the Second Temple, beginning the Jewish exile? So there actually has not been a temple there for 2,000 years, but many people, I guess, think that there is a temple up there. It's actually a mosque. The Al-Aqsa Mosque is up there on Temple Mount. According to many scholars, there was a temple on that site for nearly 1,000 years before the Roman destruction. That would mean that for about 3,000 years, Jerusalem has been the center of the Jewish people, a physical center when a temple was standing and a center for prayer and longing from afar after the Jews were dispersed around the globe. Every year at the very end of Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, and at the end of the Passover Seder, Jews recite next year in Jerusalem. And then the Jews came back. In the 19th century, Jews began building neighborhoods and settling outside the walls of Jerusalem's old city. Then the Six-Day War of 1967 ended the short Jordanian rule over the old city and united Jerusalem under Israeli jurisdiction. But this return has proved more controversial internationally. Even the United States, Israel's closest ally, has not recognized the city as our capital, even though our government has been based there since 1949. President Trump will reportedly soon change that and even announce that he is moving the United States Embassy in Jerusalem to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv. Next year, an American embassy in Jerusalem was never in our prayers, but it's still something we welcome as a sign of support and a recognition of reality. Not that a statement from the American president will actually change Israel's commitment to Jerusalem. This is our capital, and it will always be. It was taken away from the Jewish people by force. It was recaptured by force. If necessary, it will be preserved under Israel's jurisdiction by force too. Israel will, of course, embrace Washington's change of tune on Jerusalem, but the truth is Mr. Trump's announcement is not going to change as much as you might expect. History shows that. Last week, the world marked the 70th anniversary of the United Nations' 1947 vote on the partition plan, when the international community formally adopted a plan for a Jewish state alongside an Arab state in Palestine. This was an important achievement for the Zionist movement, a cause for celebration and a foundational part of Israel's history and its legitimacy. But the resolution was not the decisive factor in Israel's birth. More crucial was the reality on the ground. By the time the United Nations passed the resolution, the foundations for a Jewish state were in place. Jews living in Palestine had achieved a critical development and demographic mass, as the historian Benny Morris recently explained. They were ready and determined. A United Nations resolution was just icing on the cake. Similarly, Jerusalem is unmistakably Israel's capital, whether outsiders accept this fact or not. That's not to say there aren't challenges to this reality. The international community is not yet ready to accept it, and the Palestinians claim that the city is theirs. The demographic realities are indeed tricky. About a third of the city's residents are Arab. Nonetheless, the facts are the facts. In 1947, ahead of the United Nations vote, the CIA warned that armed hostilities between Jews and Arabs will break out if the UN General Assembly accepts the plan to partition Palestine into Jewish and Arab states. President Harry Truman decided to support partition despite the warnings. The CIA was right. The Arabs responded with violence, leading to Israel's War of Independence. Thanks to that, the Jewish state was even larger than the borders mandated by the United Nations, and the Palestinians still don't have a state. But Truman was right too. He proved himself a friend of the Jewish people, willing to take risks for what was right. Will a statement recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital ignite a similar round of defiance and violence? It's possible. Saeb Erekat, a Palestinian negotiator, has said that American recognition would discourage many of those who still believe that a peaceful solution is available, which sounds a lot like a veiled threat. Hamas, the terrorist organization that controls Gaza, called on Palestinians to incite an uprising in Jerusalem so that this conspiracy does not pass. It would be a great exaggeration to argue that Mr. Trump bears much resemblance to Harry Truman. But the president, often criticized for being blunt and never shying away from saying what he wants to say, will have his Truman-esque moment by refusing to pretend that Israel has no capital. If violence is the result of that, we will all regret it. But it is worth remembering that Truman's recognition of Israel was also met with violence, and it is still remembered as a great American moment. So that's kind of, I think, the Israeli perspective on this. Yeah, this gentleman is is a political editor at the Jewish Journal, a senior fellow at the Jewish People Policy Institute, and a contributing opinion writer for the New York Times. Yeah, well, New York Times is always pro-Jewish, pro-Israel. So I'm sure they're happy. But they might even, I guess, have to tone down their criticism of Trump a little
for a few hours.
For a few hours, yes.
Until like 2 o'clock this afternoon, then they'll resume. Well, I think one thing is for sure, the Islamic ideology does not allow for compromise in the long run.
Right.
So in the short run, they're willing to compromise, but in the long run, they want total control of Israel. They want Israel out.
Yes.
They want to destroy the state. They've made that clear. Palestinians have made that clear.
Iran has made that clear.
Iran, others have made that clear,
yeah.
Many states in the Middle East have made that very, very clear. The destruction of Israel is the ultimate goal. So they play this kind of game, these peace talks, but in reality, it doesn't really fit the Quran or Muhammad's intentions.
But I'm wondering how this is going to play now into this situation between Saudi Arabia and Iran, which seemed on the verge of war. Now they're getting ready to fight each other, and all of a sudden they have this kind of distraction over here, saying, "Wait, what's this? We need to work together to oppose that." So is this going to make Saudi Arabia and Iran pull away from war so that they can unite in opposing this American move?
I think this is a little blip because, like you said, it's not really anything substantial here. It's really just an announcement. It's a declaration of intention, but in reality, there's much deeper problems going on between Iran and Saudi Arabia. So I think it's a momentary distraction.
But you know, another reason that America has not recognized Jerusalem until now, I think, has to do with the petrodollar and the relationship with Saudi Arabia. And it's interesting because now the petrodollar is actually under threat and is perhaps even weakening with China, which is the world's largest importer of oil, now saying that it will pay its own currency to import oil. But then the people can then, they will also give the opportunity for people who take that currency to go next door and buy gold with it. And so they're doing this with Russia and even Saudi Arabia, I think is maybe, I don't think that's been quite set up yet, but we're expecting it by the end of the year to get set up like that. So what is the Trump administration's position on the petrodollar? Because without petroleum, the U.S. Dollar really has nothing to back it except for...
it's a new gold.
Yeah. Even petroleum, of course, is weak, but that was the whole idea that when Nixon took the U.S. completely away, closed the gold window, I guess is the way to say it, took it completely off of the gold standard. Then Kissinger arranged for the U.S. currency to be back or used the petroleum to create a demand for U.S. currency, to have this sustained demand for U.S. currency. How is Saudi Arabia going to, is this going to push Saudi Arabia further into China's arms? Always we wind up talking about China, don't we?
And
that's
Saudi
the reality,
Arabia.
folks. That's the reality.
I mean, the entire economy is held up by the dollar being the central currency, and a lot of that is petro-related.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think it does push Saudi Arabia closer to China, less of a love relationship with the United States as a result of this declaration.
Yes, especially this young man who is now the crown prince or de facto king, I guess. We had a report that he was going to become king, but that never happened. Not sure what's
he got
going
rid
on
of
there.
all the other people though, pretty successfully. Are they still in that hotel?
I think some of them are. I think some of them have
They're
been
living the good
released.
life in the hotel.
I'm not. I don't know. I see cots on the floor. So, one person got out of there with a $1 billion ransom.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
So apparently it's not so
all about the money.
attractive. If you want to pay $1 billion to get out of there, I guess it's not so attractive.
Guess he missed his sex slaves, perhaps.
Perhaps so. All right, let's take a break, and then we'll come back with more news from a Chinese perspective after this.
Hi there, folks. And look at what I've got here today. My God, take a look at this. This is a BFR in 454 Casul with an octagonal barrel, magna porting, micarta grips. And look at that, it even has my initials on it, JM. Look at that thing of beauty, my God. Pop open the cartridge insertion door, and look at that cylinder spin. The finest revolvers in the world. That's a cannon. That's a cannon. Oh, man. Pretty accurate, though. Pretty much on target. Oh boy! Massive recoil.
And welcome back to the King's Report for December 6th, 2017. Tim Elder and Greg Knoll in for the second King of Chunuk, Hyung. And let's go through the headlines on the Drudge Report this time. Alabama ugly. Moore spokesman calls accusers criminals. Dem ups attack. Jail the judge. Calls Bannon carpet-bagging agitator. Wall Street Journal, Republican victory may be more costly than defeat. Democrats look to use his victory against him. So, after yesterday, or was it the day before, that President Trump called Roy Moore and expressed his support and basically gave his endorsement to Roy Moore, and then the Republican National Committee also resumed its funding of Moore's campaign. And so now, and I guess they did that because they figured he has a good chance of winning. If he was going to lose, they wouldn't have done that, I don't think. But
well, the alternatives are just miserable.
Yeah.
For the GOP.
Yeah. So they don't want to lose a seat. That's true. So anyway, it looks like the vote is next Tuesday, and we'll see what happens. Mideast on edge, warnings intensify. Erdogan calls Islamic summit. That's in reference to the president's expected action later today at 1 p.m. Eastern Time to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and to say that the United States will be moving its embassy to Israel from Tel Aviv over the next few years. U.S. to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital will move embassy there. Could take 4 years to complete. Pope defends status quo. Palestinians burn images of Trump. The Pope defends the status quo. The Pope doesn't want this.
It means Trump's doing the right thing.
Yes. Poll, Republican tax cut, a PR disaster. So a poll says, and trade deficit soars as record imports from China. Socialism, capitalism seen in new light by younger Americans. Disney Fox closing on deal. Behind Rupert's talks, scale, price, and family dynamics. James, next Disney CEO. Wave of criticism over violence in Steelers-Bengals game. Player said, I felt scared. Violence too tough to watch. Unrelenting SoCal wildfire threatens thousands of homes. Surreal scenes of devastation. West Coast crisis leads to rise in homeless population. Insta banning selfies with exotic animals. D.C. has highest percentage of heavy drinkers.
You need a lot of stress release there.
We could say things about that.
Yeah.
Airlines physically restraining more passengers. Ouch. First you get fondled, molested, then they
you get
put you in a straitjacket.
assaulted. Well, now they're overbooking all the airlines, so people get pretty testy when they say, "Oh, we don't have a room on this flight after all."
Mysterious condition hits pot smokers, vomit and scream. Hey, what did we tell you? Don't smoke. Russia barred from 2018 Winter Olympics. We'll be going into that later on. American bombers fly over Korean Peninsula. Chinese paper offers advice on surviving nukes. AI to create false reality. Humans can't distinguish. California bill to banish gasoline cars and works. Conyers resigns. The end. New accuser hand
That's
up.
pretty big.
Yeah.
He's a pretty major figure.
Then he endorses his son. So North Korea is not the only place where we have this father-son succession.
Raised in the same tradition as his father, I'm sure.
Family feud ensues over a seat, but I guess there's a discussion in the family who's going to take over that seat. Black lawmakers fume, double standard. Yeah, what about Al Franken? No kidding, double standard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Spielberg, Trump rebuke, starring Streep. Meryl Streep, I'm sure they'll have fun doing that. On media, trust but verify. Malicious prosecution suit against Sheriff Joe goes to trial. UK moles releasing genetically mutated rats to solve rodent problem. What could go wrong?
My gosh. So many things.
Yeah. Skydiving Santa crashes into tree, breaks leg. Yeah, I'm sure we'll be reading about these mutated rats in London. Mutated rats in London take over the city.
Right.
Elected to parliament.
They start eating humans.
10 years from now, this is going to be something, yeah.
Yeah.
New robots can see into the future. A growing number imprisoned for use of emojis.
This AI will become the new gods. You know, that will become the new thing to worship.
I'm sorry, I don't understand this. How can you get imprisoned for using emojis?
For using what?
You know what an is that how you pronounce it in English? Emojis? These little picture, I guess maybe emojis or...
Mimes?
No.
No.
These little it may seem use of emoji language get people put in jail. You know these things, these little things.
Oh. Really?
How do you pronounce that in English? Isn't emoji is not the right pronunciation?
Yeah.
Emojis are everywhere.
Emojis. Emojis. I'm sorry. Emojis.
Well, that can be considered hate speech, if you...
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they express a certain emotion.
See, in Japanese, means picture. Is picture. Emoji is character. So it's emoji.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's emojis, right? Emojis.
Emojis.
I have to get that pronunciation down. Nearly everyone is familiar with emoji, the popular icons that appear in text messages, email, and social media platforms. Emoji are often used as lighthearted adjuncts to text or to soften the blow of a message. Emoji can be viewed as overly simplistic in some contexts. For example, government officials were questioned when Foreign Minister Julie Bishop conducted an interview using just emoji and described Russian President Vladimir Putin using an angry face. That's taking it too far. A 2017 study found that the use of emoji in work emails reduced perceptions of competence. Yeah, I would say, yeah. But emojis can be taken very seriously in the context of the law. The use of emojis has challenged lawyers, judges, and lawmakers in several countries. In a legal context, emojis are increasingly recognized not as a joke or ornament, but as a legitimate form of literacy, making a criminal threat via emoji. Perhaps the most troubling use of emoji has come through their use in interpersonal messages where it is unclear whether they modify or amplify a prima facie criminal threat. In New Zealand, a judge considered the role of emoji in a Facebook message sent by a man to his ex-partner. The man wrote, "You're going to get it," followed by an airplane emoji. Concluding that the message and emoji generally conveyed that the defendant was coming to get his ex-partner, the judge sentenced the accused to 8 months jail on a charge of stalking. In 2016, a court in France convicted a young man of threatening his ex-girlfriend through a text message sent by a mobile phone. The court found out the inclusion of a gun emoji meant that the message amounted to a death threat in the form of an image. The court sentenced the defendant to 6 months imprisonment and imposed a €1,000 fine. Okay, well, I see that.
Yeah. I thought it's just a smiley face or a devil face or something. But
all right, we're good with that.
We're educated.
Yes. Where were we?
Emoji.
Malicious prosecution suit against skydiving Santa. Okay. Ma tells American companies to stop whining about China. Inside Big Tech conference, new ways to track citizens. Man says cops ordered him to cut off his dog's head or go to jail. King covered that yesterday. That's pretty... but, like I said yesterday, why didn't the man just say no? Just say, okay, take me to jail. Let's see what a judge will say about this.
Yeah. And the newspapers.
Yeah. And, you take me to jail. You take me to jail, you lose your job. Mm-hmm. Policeman is probably losing his job anyway, but anyway. Tech CEOs flock to New Age retreat, chant, meditate, tantric sex. Don't even want to go there. Naked in circle, locating real selves. Okay. Pollution wipes out benefits of exercise. Delta flight makes emergency stop as bathrooms fill up. That's happened to me, actually. But when it happens to me, we're over the Pacific and there's no place to stop.
They can't just release it over the Pacific.
They can't do that. Close call, plane nearly lands on runway as another departs JFK. Oh, that happens from time to time, and that's scary. Islamist plot to kill UK May thwarted. Wow. USA faces nightmare flu season. Mueller follows money, expanding toward finances of Trump or other individuals. White House no bank records subpoenaed. Pence preparing for Mueller interview. A magazine says Democratic obsession with impeachment is dangerous. The Weinstein complicity machine. Top gossip editor rocked by sex allegations. Flashback. Media elites secretly celebrate Lauer as cock of 30 Rock.
The what?
The cock of 30 Rock. That's how the media elites secretly celebrated him. And now they're saying, Zucker roast revealed. Recount looms and too close to call Atlanta mayor's race. Honduras ballots to be checked as election crisis simmers. Asteroid worth $10,000 quadrillion could sink world economy. Now there you go. If a rock lands on the Earth that is made of diamond, for example, is a solid diamond, let's say. A solid diamond flies out of space and just, boom, lands on the Earth. That would completely wipe out the world economy. I mean, it was because it would
upset the balance.
It would upset the balance. Yeah,
that's newsworthy. I mean, where'd that story come from? I mean,
all right,
who comes up with these things?
You want to know? We'll tell you. But there are, Father said that there are stars or there are planets or stars and planets made of diamonds floating around the universe. And actually that was later confirmed by NASA.
Okay.
NASA is on a mission to visit an asteroid that is worth so much money it would destroy the world's economy. The space rock, dubbed 16 Psyche, is approximately 252 kilometers, 156 miles wide, and is part of a belt of asteroids in the inner solar system. The U.S. Space Agency has now fast-forwarded its plans to send a rocket to the asteroid, bringing it forward to 2022. Psyche is made up entirely of nickel and iron, which are the exact same materials at the Earth's core. This, as well as its sheer size, had led experts to believe the asteroid is actually the remains of a planet. But the value of just the iron alone, if the asteroid was transported back to Earth, would be 10,000 quadrillion dollars. This would be enough to cause the world's economy worth $73.7 trillion to collapse altogether. Lindy Elkson-Tanton, the lead scientist on the NASA mission and the director of Arizona State University School of Earth and Science Space Exploration, said previously, even if we could grab a big metal piece and drag it back here, what would you do? Could you kind of sit on it and hide it and control the global resource, kind of like diamonds are controlled corporately, and protect your market? What if you decided you were going to bring it back and you were just going to solve the metal resource problems of humankind for all time? The mission to Psyche will also help space experts defend the planet against catastrophic asteroid collisions. The 252-kilometer wide asteroid is nearly 17 times bigger than the asteroid that led to the extinction of dinosaurs millions of years ago. It is thought that by studying the rock, scientists can better learn how to defend Earth against the threat. So there you go.
So if it actually collides with Earth, we're done anyways. Forget the economy.
But if you were to bring it back, in other words, if all that iron, just the iron alone.
You harness it or you mine it off of the asteroid.
So this is what I'm saying, that once we get this beta testing on Earth, which beta testing has been going on now for 7,000 years, all right? And we have this thing called original sin that we're still trying to solve in the beta testing phase. Once we get that all, we're ready to scale up, all right? We're ready to scale up. We'll go out into space, and we'll use these stars as, we'll mine the resources on these stars to create our own environments, to where, we can create Earth-like environments, nice 4 seasons, or 3 or 2, whatever you want, Hawaii-like environments, or...
Didn't God already do that?
But as the population expands, we have to go out into space. Yeah, that's my... I was reading in Chun Sung-Gyung, not on the King's Report, but another time where Father says that this physical universe, there should be no empty spaces in this physical universe, that humanity should fill the entire physical universe. Take a few years. Maybe, but a million years from now, I expect that will be the case. I fully expect that will be the case. Yeah, because there's just keep on increasing the population.
You think humans will create these new environments?
Yes,
rather than God already preparing other planets for our inhabitation.
He may have prepared a few, but we don't have to rely just on that. Even just within the solar system, for example. This is the only place
livable place.
We know that a livable place in the solar system, right? So even within the solar system, rather than we can go to Mars if we want to, but why not just like the International Space Station or other space, sort of be flying around and have our own sort of environment up there.
I don't know.
All under the Choniku Constitution.
It's you're devoid of the natural world in those space stations. You'd have to do an extensive amount of recreation of the natural world.
Exactly.
It just seems to make smarter sense to take better care of this planet, because this planet can actually hold many, many more people.
Okay, but there is a limit.
Yeah, at some point.
At some point there will be a limit, yes. At some point there will be a limit. And I'm sure we'll go past that limit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 1 million years from now. If you think about 1 million years from now, all right? Because it's going to take, 1 billion years for the sun to die or something.
Right.
Or at least it'll be a while yet.
Mm-hmm.
So 1 million years from now, if we're still just all on this earth, well, we have 7 billion now. 1 million years from now, I mean, think of how much. If people stop having abortions, you know,
mm-hmm.
and science lets us all live longer. Everybody's eating healthy. We're going to have a lot of people in 1 million years from now. I don't think they'll all fit on the earth. You continue to look like you're rather skeptical.
Well, I think God has plans for creating, maybe other planets have already been created and we need to discover them. But I think our own, it's like creating a a rat to fight other rats. I just think anytime human beings they're not gods. They're not gods. They cannot create the same kind of mystery and magic of the natural world. Only God can do that. That's just my opinion. I think God has already got it figured out. He's already created other planets that are pretty awesome.
All right, we'll see.
I don't know if we'll see or not.
Check back in 1 million years.
Right, you and I will have to meet in the spirit world and
Check
see how things are going.
Yes, see how things are going, yes. Okay, let's take a break and we'll be back going through some of these stories when we come back from the break.
Boy, wasn't that fun shooting this Tommy gun today?
It's always fun shooting Tommy guns. This one especially. It's just absolutely gorgeous.
All polished and chromed up. It really looks like $1 million.
Yeah. Elliot Ness would have loved one of those.
Yeah, and it's available right now in your favorite dealer, and you go pick one up.
Yeah, just have him call your distributor.
I mean, the gun, was initially made way back when, back in the 27 is this one.
Yeah, Model 27.
I was surprised by how quick it knocked down those plates.
Oh, 3.5 second run, under 3.5 second run, knocking down a plate right. 341.
I mean, the gun is heavy. It's about 12, 14 pounds, especially with this drum. But it's surprising how quick you can go with it. It would actually make quite a good self-defense rifle at home.
If I climbed in somebody's window and they were aiming that at me, I think I'd get out of there real quick. So
that sounds about right to me.
Just the intimidation factor alone.
Fire!
At break of day.
Welcome back to the King's Report. I'm sorry, I was reading this article. Welcome back to the King's Report for December 6, 2017. Let me share with you what I was laughing about. The first part of this article is serious, but then in the end, there's a kind of a funny line that I read. I just involuntarily burst out laughing. The first part is serious. Okay, first part is serious. NBC staffers are afraid to get nuked at the Winter Olympics. NBC staffers, NBC, has the rights to the Olympic Games in the United States.
I see.
Are gun-shy about volunteering to work at the upcoming 2018 Pyeongchang Olympic Games. Sources tell Page 6 because of tensions in the region. An insider told us that usually NBC staffers are enthusiastic about being sent to the Games for work. But with the upcoming Winter Games in Pyeongchang, a remote South Korean city 40 miles south of the demilitarized zone, some workers are choosing to stay home. They usually all want to sign up for the Olympics, but they're afraid to get nuked, said a source. But another insider told us that if NBC News employees have concerns about attending, they are not required to go, as was the policy with the Rio Summer Olympics in 2016 and Zika fears. Then, here's the funny part. Perhaps as a cautionary tale, one Olympic delegate headed to a meeting in Pyeongchang this year reportedly mistakenly flew to North Korea.
Pyongyang.
North Korea, South Korea, that's when I read that I just burst out laughing. Because some people still don't know where Korea is. You still don't know where Korea is. And it doesn't happen so much now, but in the past, if the Korean president would visit a country, sometimes they would play the North Korean national anthem, for example, or raise the North Korean flag. I think actually at the Olympics, the North Korean flag has gone up instead of the South Korean flag, and maybe vice versa a few times. That can cause some tensions, yes.
Concerned about the tensions. This is on the verge of starting World War III.
Yes. Well, let me read one more sentence. Then again, despite the political turmoil in the Korean Peninsula, the absence of Matt Lauer should be a draw. Because Matt Lauer used the Sochi Winter Olympics to exercise his predatory instincts against female staffers. Allegedly. Innocent until proven guilty, but still fired nonetheless. Just make sure you get to the right Korea. North Korea also has a ski slope built especially for Kim Jong-un. But make sure you get there to the right Korea if you're going to go.
I think it would be a good time to stay home on that one.
Well, I have to see. Koreans themselves are pretty nonchalant about it, and one Korean told me, 5,000 years we've been invaded about 1,000 times, but we're still here. To me, that seems like a kind of an R-type perspective. That
no matter what, you're going to keep going.
No, in other words, that the tribe or the flock survives, even though. Sure, foxes and wolves may eat some of us, but we're going to survive and maybe I'll be eaten, but the I don't know what you call a bunch of rabbits, the flock or the tribe or whatever, the herd will survive.
Right.
The herd has survived for 5,000 years and will continue to survive. That kind of perspective seems.
Which would be fine. It would be a K-type mentality if you were determined to fight.
Yes.
But it almost sounds fatalistic.
Yes. And in fact, right now, can you get this? I was doing the Korean report this morning, and South Korea is reducing its military. It's at about 630,000 military personnel now, and over the next few years, they're reducing it to 500,000.
Well, it's kind of in line, right, with the president's. The president of South Korea.
Part of it is because the birth rate is gone down, but that's not all though. Part of it is just they just want to they're decreasing the draft period that people have to serve in the draft. Right now it's 21 months. They're going to reduce that to 18 months.
And is there still a plan to rid the country of U.S. bases or?
Well, there's no plan to do that.
On the
there's
table?
no plan to do that. That's just a trend that's continuing. Yeah. And U.S. bases have now pulled back south of the Han River.
Okay.
Whereas they
so
used
they
to be
have reduced.
Well, they've pulled back. Well, U.S. troops have been going down since the 1980s. When I was covering the Korean Peninsula in the 80s, I would always write, what was it, 40-some thousand, 43,000 or something like that, 41,000, 40,000 troops on the Korean Peninsula. Now it's 20-something, 26 or 28,000, I think. So they've been reducing it over the years steadily and gradually. And they always say, oh, well, it's okay because we have higher technology. We have more technology, but still, no, it's still, as Kukchinim always says, the basis of any military is your infantryman with a rifle.
Yeah,
that's the basis of any military.
And China's increasing those numbers.
Right, China's increasing those numbers. That's right.
Yeah.
And so to solve that, I was saying during the Korean portion of this broadcast that what they need to do is to go ahead and take Kukchim's advice and liberalize their gun laws and make it at least so that people who leave the military can take their guns with them when they go home. You would think that a country that is under this kind of a threat would be willing to do that.
Yeah.
You read about this article on Jerusalem a moment ago where the guy said that we will Israel was created by force, maintained by force, and we will, if necessary, preserve it with force. That's an Israeli talking. It is not a Korean talking. It is not a Korean talking at all. We'll get along somehow.
Yeah, and it really kind of minimizes the idea of all the suffering that went on during all those invasions of South Korea, right?
Yes.
All the complete, absolute conquest that occurred.
Also on the Korean Peninsula, U.S. B-1B bombers to fly over Korea in joint exercise. The United States will deploy B-1B Lancer strategic bomber aircraft to Korea on Wednesday as a part of a combined air combat training, a defense source said. The long-range multi-mission supersonic bombers based in Guam plan to conduct bombing drills together with South Korea's fighter jets. The source would not specify the number of B-1Bs to come here. This is a Yonhap story. And the exact schedule of their sortie. The U.S. Usually sends 2 B-1Bs to the peninsula, either in the wake of North Korea's provocations in a show of force or on routine flight training missions. A pair of B-1Bs were deployed to South Korea in early November, days ahead of President Donald Trump's regional trip. South Korea and the U.S. have been holding annual Vigilant Ace Air Force practice, which is to run through Friday. 24 F-22 and F-35 stealth fighters of the U.S. are taking part in the exercise, along with more than 200 other warplanes of the two countries. So that's the other Korea-related news that we have this morning. Let's see. Did you want to do that story on Russia being barred from the Pyeongchang Olympics?
Yeah, it looks like Russia, who normally takes great pride in the Olympic Games, won't be allowed to participate as a nation, but their athletes will. So it says Russia's Olympic team has been barred from the 2018 Winter Games in Pyeongchang, South Korea. The country's government officials are forbidden to attend. Its flag will not be displayed at the opening ceremony, and its anthem will not sound. Any athletes from Russia who receive special dispensation to compete will do so as individuals, wearing a neutral uniform, and the official record books will forever show that Russia won 0 medals.
So what about the ice hockey team, I wonder?
I would imagine the same thing. They probably can't participate as a Russian team.
I guess will there be an Olympic ice hockey team then, and will the Olympics win the Olympic ice hockey gold medal?
I know. I don't know. So the ruling was the final confirmation that the nation was guilty of executing an extensive state-backed doping program. So this is a doping program that was endorsed by the Kremlin. The scheme was rivaled perhaps only by the notorious program conducted by the East Germany throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Now the sports world will wait to see how Russia responds. Some Russian officials had threatened to boycott if the IOC delivered such a severe punishment. So it's it's all revolving around unfair advantage that Russians have had, and they've been quite in your face about it. They apparently have been found guilty on multiple occasions, having substances in various blood tests.
I was curious about the hockey, so I looked it up, and there is an article on that. Do you have more on that article?
Yeah, there's quite a bit more. I don't know how much you want to.
Well, let me read this story from ABC News. The International Olympic Committee's decision to ban Russia from the 2018 Winter Games in Pyeongchang, South Korea, promises to further dilute a men's ice hockey tournament that is already missing NHL talent. So I guess it's not going to be very much worth watching anyway. The IOC ban announced Tuesday followed the completion of its investigations. From a hockey perspective, the news has several major consequences. The foremost, whether a Russian team competes in the hockey tournament at all. If it does, it would do so under a neutral flag. There's already been chatter in Russia that the country would boycott the games if a ban was handed down. But Russian presidential spokesman Dmitry Peskov told reporters Monday via TASS that no boycott was being considered. We oppose the violation of our athletes' rights. We are against groundless violations of rights. But at the same time, Russia remains committed to the Olympic ideas. As President Putin said, it is his decision. The Kremlin spokesman said, IOC Thomas Bach on Tuesday, an Olympic boycott has never accomplished anything. I don't see any reason for a boycott for the Russian athletes because we allowed the clean Russian athletes to participate to show that there are clean athletes in Russia. Then there's the Continental Hockey League issue. If the Russians do participate in the hockey tournament, the majority of the team's players will be from the KHL. Here's a look at the roster. So KHL is the Continental Hockey League with Continental spelled with a K.
Okay, so it's like the United Federation of like the former USSR League kind of.
I don't know what the KHL is. I never heard of it.
Yeah.
There's no explanation here of. There were 15 KHL players on the Team Canada roster for the Karjala Cup tournament, which is an Olympic showcase.
You said Team Canada?
So, anyway, I guess, I don't know. I have no idea what this KHL is. All right.
It's probably like the NHL. It's a league in Russia made up of countries throughout northern
maybe
Europe.
So, yeah. Okay. So that certainly cuts down on the draw for the Pyeongchang Olympics in general, not just for the hockey.
Is Korea into hockey?
No.
Do they have a strong hockey culture?
No, they don't.
No.
I think they may have a team, but maybe some universities have some teams. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But South Korea is really on the border of where winter sports are possible, and winter sports in general are not all that popular. Mm-hmm. There's skiing, of course, and snowboarding and stuff like that, but and ice skating some. But winter sports in general are not all that popular in South Korea.
Yeah, usually they choose a country, a hosting city that's strong in winter sports.
Right.
So it's interesting that they chose this location. I guess because of its proximity to all of Asia, right? It's
maybe so. Yeah, but it might have been better to choose a city in northeast China or someplace like that. Mm-hmm. In northwest China, I mean, northeast. No, I'm sorry, northeast. Yeah.
Yeah, by the up. Yeah, that would be. Anyways, it's probably good for the Korean economy. Sometimes these things they end up losing big money. Yeah. Depending on the amount of infrastructure that needs to be built.
And depending on the amount of interest it draws.
Yeah.
Now that Russia's out of the Pyeongchang, I imagine that the interest in probably the advertising revenue for the Olympics will go down, and perhaps some people who have been banking on making money in the Olympics are maybe disappointed. Mm-hmm. Maybe disappointed.
Yeah, and certainly with the threat of war looming any day, that has to affect attendance internationally. Anyways, I think Koreans, like you said, South Koreans, they're kind of numb to all of this. Yeah. But I think if you're an international visitor, you're not necessarily going to take your family to South Korea right now. Mm-hmm. It's not the safest place to travel to enjoy the Olympic Games.
In the 4 minutes that we have left, I wanted to cover just one more story. Security services foil Islamist plot to blow up Downing Street, kill Theresa May.
Yeah.
British security services have foiled an Islamist plot to blow up Prime Minister Theresa May, Sky News reported on Tuesday. Police told the network's Martin Brunt that they believe the accused planned to launch an improvised explosive device at the heavily gated entrance to Downing Street and use the ensuing chaos to kill Theresa May. This is something which has been pursued over several weeks, at least by Scotland Yard, MI5, and West Midlands Police, Brunt said. It came to a head last week with the arrest of 2 men by armed police who earlier today were charged with preparing acts of terrorism. 2 men arrested for the plot, with difficult to pronounce names, will attend a preliminary court hearing at Westminster Magistrates Court on Wednesday morning. But they are, by the way, Arab-looking names. The revelation comes hours after the head of MI5, Andrew Parker, revealed that police have foiled 9 terrorist plots since March this year. Mr. Parker said that 9 terrorist attacks have been prevented in the past year. Said a spokesman for the Prime Minister, there have been 5 attacks that have got through, 4 of which are related to Islamist terrorism. The Prime Minister gave thanks to the tireless work of staff at MI5 to combat the unprecedented terrorist threat. He continued. Britain has been the target of 3 major Islamist terrorist incidents this year. In March, 5 people were killed and 50 were injured in a truck attack outside London's House of Parliament, while another attack in May on the London Bridge, 7 people dead and 48 injured. Also in May, an attack during the concert in Manchester by the singer Ariana Grande killed 22 people and left 59 injured, the majority of whom were children. Downing Street was last targeted in 1991 when the Marxist guerrilla group, the Irish Republican Army, threw an explosive device into then Prime Minister John Major's garden, although he was not hurt in the incident. So that is the news from
It's
from
interesting
the UK.
how the fear of terror affects our lives. It kind of came and went from the news, but I thought it was quite significant. In Paris, they canceled the huge Christmas market that they have there, and it's a huge tourist draw, and it's a time to really celebrate the birth of Christ, and for people to shop and to it's generally been a very well attended market, but they canceled it because of the threat of terror. And I think this is really the goal of terrorism, to alter our Judeo-Christian activities and to put fear in the hearts of innocent people, so that they cannot enjoy the freedoms that they've had for years and years. So in one sense, that was a huge victory for the terrorists to cancel a Christmas market like that.
Yes.
And I think that's the purpose of terrorism, is to get us so fearful that we're willing to give up our freedom.
Yes. Well, over the next few years, as we go through this judgment period, perhaps that's inevitable. And perhaps in order to survive, in order to prevent them from running up the body count, which is what their objective, they want to run up the body count. So in order to do that, it's best for us to stay away from big cities, stay away from large crowds. And I would say stay away from the Christmas market. I'm sorry. You may say, I'm giving the terrorists a victory. But I would say just to, don't let the terrorists run up the body count.
Yeah, we can have a debate about that sometime, but I think we can't go crawling back in our homes and just lock the doors. We need to get our AR-15s.
Yes, be in a location where you can do that. And in a rural area where the terrorists are less likely to strike.
Right.
I would say, I don't know, Northeast Pennsylvania might be a good place.
I'm with you on that.
Okay. All right, we agree.
We'll agree on that.
Okay. All right, thank you for tuning in this morning. Pray that you have a safe day, and that may God bless you, Godspeed, and may His kingdom come.
Adieu.